Dr. Amanda Reynolds stared at the holographic display, her coffee growing cold beside the quantum interface terminal. The lab beneath MIT hummed with the steady pulse of containment fields, but her attention remained fixed on the impossible numbers floating before her. "Run it again, Marcus," she said, brushing aside a strand of auburn hair that had escaped her hasty ponytail. Her research partner nodded, his fingers dancing across the haptic controls. The quantum matrix pulsed, its crystalline structure glowing with an inner light that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. They had started their research hoping to match the established FTL methods used by the handful of alien civilizations that humanity had detected over the decades. Instead, they had stumbled onto something entirely different. "Field integrity at 100%, Marcus reported, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Quantum entanglement matrix stable. Ready for micro-scale test." Reynolds took a deep breath. They had run the simulations 1,000 times, but this was different. This was real. "Initiate the sequence." The test chamber, a reinforced cube barely 10 centimeters on each side, filled with a darkness deeper than black. For a fraction of a second, reality seemed to hiccup. The monitoring equipment screamed as space itself twisted inside the chamber. "Energy spike," called out Dr. Sarah Hughes from her station. "It's working. But these readings. Amanda, this is nothing like the alien FTL signatures we've studied. This is something new." Reynolds watched as the test object, a simple steel ball bearing, vanished from one side of the chamber and appeared on the other. But it hadn't moved through the space between points A and B. Instead, it had torn a hole in reality itself, creating a momentary corridor through space-time. "Full stop," Reynolds ordered, her heart pounding. "Save all data. Lock it down." The system powered down, but the excitement in the lab only grew. They had done it, achieved faster than light travel. But as Reynolds studied the aftermath readings, her elation turned to concern. "These energy signatures," she muttered, enlarging a particular set of data. A space-time distortion didn't completely heal after the test. Marcus leaned in, his dark eyes widening. "It's like we left a scar." "But that's impossible according to everything we know about quantum mechanics." "Impossible according to everything we knew yesterday," Reynolds corrected. She gestured at the readouts. "Today, we're writing new rules." The lab's quantum sensors continued to detect faint ripples emanating from the test site, like aftershocks from a subatomic earthquake. None of their simulations had predicted this. They had created something unprecedented, an FTL drive that didn't carefully step through higher dimensions like alien designs, but instead punched holes through the fabric of reality itself. "We need to inform the board," Sarah said, already composing a message on her tablet. "This changes everything." Reynolds nodded, but her attention was drawn to a sudden spike in background radiation. The ripples were growing stronger, not weaker. Whatever they had done to local space-time, it wasn't stabilizing. "Lock down the lab," she ordered. "Full containment protocols. Some things." The warning klaxon cut her off as every sensor in the facility suddenly redlined. The quantum matrix, despite being powered down, pulsed with that impossible light again. Space itself shuddered. 300 light-years away, on a Galactic Council observation post, alarms that had never activated before began to wail. The Cesare sensor specialist on duty stared in horror at readings that shouldn't have been possible. Humans, the primitive species that had barely mastered orbital flight, had done something that violated the fundamental laws of physics. Back in the MIT lab, Reynolds and her team worked frantically to contain the cascade of spatial distortions their experiment had triggered. They had no way of knowing that their breakthrough had just announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, by demonstrating that humans could tear holes in the universe itself. As the quantum matrix finally stabilized, Reynolds sat heavily in her chair, staring at the test chamber. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but something in her gut told her this was just the beginning. Humanity had knocked on the door to the stars not with a gentle tap, but with a battering ram that threatened to bring down the walls of reality itself. The arrival of the alien ships happened exactly 36 hours after the breakthrough. They appeared without warning, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against Earth's atmosphere. No dramatic chase through the solar system, no gradual diplomatic approach, just 3 massive vessels suddenly existing in low orbit, their presence announcing that humanity's cosmic isolation had ended. Dr. Amanda Reynolds watched the live feed from her lab, surrounded by stone-faced military officers and ashen-faced government officials. The MIT Quantum Research Facility had transformed overnight into an impromptu command center, screens displaying everything from military readiness reports to hastily assembled first contact protocols. "They're not broadcasting any signals," General Matthews reported, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical displays. "No attempts at communication, no aggressive moves. They're just waiting." Reynolds studied the ship's positioning. They're arranged in a perfect equilateral triangle. That's not a military formation. It's a containment pattern. The words had barely left her mouth when every screen in the facility suddenly shifted, displaying a crystalline figure that seemed to be composed of geometric shapes and flowing light. Voxis, they would later learn, chief physicist of the Galactic Council's Science Division. "People of Earth," the being spoke, its voice somehow both harmonious and deeply alien. "We come in response to your quantum event. You have created something that threatens the very fabric of space-time. We cannot allow this to continue." Reynolds stepped forward, ignoring the general's attempt to hold her back. "I'm Dr. Amanda Reynolds, head of the Quantum Propulsion Project. What do you mean by threatens?" The crystalline being's facets shifted, creating what might have been an expression of concern. "Your experiment created ripples we detected across hundreds of light years. The damage to local space-time has not yet begun to heal. Do you understand what you have done?" Before Reynolds could respond, a holographic display materialized in the center of the lab. It showed a 3-dimensional map of local space, with a wound-like tear visible at Earth's location. As they watched, tiny fractures seemed to spread outward from the tear like cracks in glass. The established methods of faster-than-light travel, Voxis continued, work by finding natural quantum tunnels between points in space-time. Your method devours reality itself to create a path. Each use leaves lasting damage. General Matthews stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute. We've spent years studying the theoretical frameworks of alien FTL drives. This is just a different approach." "No," Voxis interrupted, its crystalline form pulsing with what might have been agitation. "This is not just different. Imagine space-time as a fabric. Current FTL methods slip through the weave. Your drive tears holes in it. If used repeatedly, these tears could create cascade failures that would unravel the very structure of space itself." Reynolds felt her throat tighten as the implications became clear. "The ripples we detected after the test, they're still propagating, aren't they?" "Yes." Voxis's form shifted again, creating patterns that seemed to convey both concern and respect. "Your species has achieved something remarkable, Dr. Reynolds, but you have also created something terribly dangerous. The Council has dispatched me to ensure all research into this technology ceases immediately." The general's face darkened. "Now hold on. You can't just show up and demand." "We can, and we must," Voxis said. "This is not about politics or species rights. This is about preventing the potential destruction of space-time itself. Even a few more tests could create damage beyond repair." Reynolds stared at the holographic display, watching the fractures slowly spread. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd achieved. It all had to stop. Unless, what if we could modify it? She asked suddenly. Find a way to contain the damage or repair it. Vox's crystalline form stilled. You would attempt to modify something this dangerous rather than abandon it. Of course, Reynolds replied. That's what humans do. We don't just give up when something's dangerous. We find ways to make it safe. The alien physicist was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its tone carried something new. Perhaps a glimmer of hope, or perhaps fear of human determination. The Council will not accept continued research, HFYSci-Fi said. But perhaps we could discuss theoretical modifications, under strict supervision. Reynolds smiled. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Humanity's first step into the galactic community might have begun with a dangerous misstep, but they would find a way forward. They always did. The Galactic Council chamber resembled a massive geode split open, its crystalline walls refracting light from 1,000 different species' environmental bubbles. Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood at the center of it all, her presentation hovering in holographic detail above the assembled representatives. She had spent 3 weeks preparing for this moment, working alongside HFYSci-Fi to prove that humanity's FTL drive could be controlled. The quantum matrix can be modified, she explained, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. By introducing a controlled feedback loop, we can force the spatial tiers to heal themselves. A ripple of electromagnetic pulses, the equivalent of murmuring, spread through the chamber. The Kexarathi delegation, their scaled bodies coiled in their high-pressure pods, flashed patterns of skepticism across their chromatic scales. "This is madness," the Kexarathi speaker transmitted. The humans proposed to continue experimenting with technology that could unravel reality itself. "We demand immediate quarantine of their system." Reynolds kept her composure, though her hands clenched behind her back. "With respect, Ambassador, we've already proven the concept in controlled tests. The modified drive." "Tests conducted under HFYSci's supervision," interrupted the Meridian representative, its silver fog form swirling with interest. "Tests that showed remarkable potential. My species believes this technology could revolutionize deep space exploration." The chamber erupted in overlapping transmissions and signals. Some species supported the Meridian's position, seeing opportunity in human innovation. Others backed the Kexarathi's call for quarantine. Centuries-old alliances began to crack under the pressure of this new paradigm. HFYSci-Fi floated forward, its crystalline form refracting the chamber's light. "Order, please." Dr. Reynolds has not finished her presentation. Reynolds nodded gratefully to her alien colleague. Over the past weeks, she had come to respect HFYSci's careful approach to science, while HFYSci had developed an appreciation for human ingenuity. She activated the next phase of her presentation, showing the modified drive's test results. "The original tiers in spacetime were like open wounds," she explained. "But our modified drive includes what we call a suture protocol. Watch." The hologram showed a small-scale test. As the drive activated, it created the characteristic tear in space. But this time, waves of quantum energy followed in its wake, weaving reality back together like threads closing a cut. "Fascinating," hummed the collective mind of the Synapse cluster, their neural network representatives pulsing with interest. "The humans have turned destruction into reconstruction. They do not simply break barriers, they rebuild them." The Kexarathi speaker's scales flashed warning patterns. And what happens when this suture protocol fails? When human recklessness leads to tiers too large to repair? The Foundation worlds lied along major trade routes. "We cannot risk." "We cannot risk stagnation either," countered the Meridian representative. "Our species have used the same FTL methods for millennia. Perhaps we need human innovation." "Human recklessness, you mean?" the Kexarathi transmitted. Reynolds stepped forward, her patience finally wearing thin. "We're not asking for permission to experiment freely. We're proposing the Joint Development Program, with Council oversight. Humanity wants to join the galactic community, not endanger it." She gestured to the hologram, which now showed the modified drive's theoretical applications. "Yes, our first attempt was dangerous. But we've learned. We've adapted. That's what humans do. We take risks, we make mistakes, and we find solutions." HFYSci moved to her side. Its crystalline form aligned in what she had learned was a gesture of support. The Council must decide. Do we suppress human innovation or help guide it? Do we make enemies of a species that can tear holes in space-time, or allies who could help us understand new principles of physics? The chamber fell silent. Reynolds looked around at the assembled species, some beautiful, some terrifying, all watching Earth's representative with a mixture of fear and fascination. Whatever they decided here would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for centuries to come. The High Speaker's voice resonated through the chamber. We will recess for deliberation. But remember, while we debate, the tears in space-time continue to spread. We must choose not just wisely, but quickly. As the representatives filed out, Reynolds caught Vox's equivalent of a glance. They both knew that somewhere in the galaxy, others would be watching this debate with great interest, and perhaps already planning how to acquire humanity's dangerous innovation for themselves. Dr. Amanda Reynolds stared in horror at the quantum readings flooding her screen. She hadn't authorized this test. No one had. At least no one who understood the true implications of what they were dealing with. "Who?" she demanded, bursting into the Council's emergency session. Which Earth government broke the testing moratorium? Vox's crystalline form pulsed with distress patterns she'd never seen before. Above the Council chamber, a real-time hologram showed the devastation. A gash in space-time larger than Earth's moon, spreading like a crack in glass. The coalition of Pacific nations, General Matthews admitted, his face grim. They thought they'd modified the drive according to your specifications. They were wrong. Reynolds fought back a wave of nausea as she studied the data. They didn't account for the cascade effect. The tear isn't healing, it's growing. The Kexarathi ambassador's scales flashed victory patterns. As we warned, humans cannot be trusted with this power. The quarantine must begin immediately. Through the chamber's massive viewing panels, Reynolds could see ships arriving by the hundreds, warships, their weapons already charged. Species that had been arguing about trade policies days ago were now united in their fear of what humanity had unleashed. The tear is expanding at a geometric rate. Vox is reported, interfacing directly with the Council's sensor network. At current progression, it will intersect with 3 major trade routes within the month. If it reaches the quantum slipstream nexus, Reynolds didn't need him to finish. The nexus was the backbone of galactic civilization, a network of natural quantum tunnels that made standard FTL travel possible. If this tier reached it, the damage would be catastrophic. "I can fix this," she said, her mind already racing through calculations. "But I need access to the test site. And time. Time." The Meridian representative's silver fog form swirled with agitation. "While we wait, that wound in space grows. Every passing moment risks. Risks less than a rushed solution." Reynolds snapped. She pulled up her own models on the holographic display. "Look, the tear isn't just growing, it's developing a pattern. There's math here we don't understand yet, but..." A new alarm cut through the chamber. On the display, a second tear had appeared, smaller but just as volatile. Then a third. "Multiple unauthorized tests," General Matthews reported, his voice heavy with dread. "Russia, Brazil, the European Union. They're all trying to perfect the drive before anyone else." The chamber erupted in chaos. The Kexarathi called for immediate military action. The Meridians began calculating evacuation routes for their nearest colonies. The Synapse Cluster's neural network representatives pulsed with predictions of galactic collapse. Reynolds watched the tears spreading across space and time, her life's work transformed into an extinction-level event. But there was something about the pattern, something in the way the tears propagated. "Voxis," she called out, her voice cutting through the pandemonium. "The original quantum matrices. They were crystalline structures, right? Like your physical form." The alien physicist's fragments realigned in what she recognized as curiosity. "Yes, we based them on natural quantum tunnels, which follow crystalline patterns in spacetime. But our drive doesn't," Reynolds said, excitement building despite the crisis. It creates organic patterns, more like living tissue than crystal. That's why the standard repair protocols aren't working. We're trying to fix an organic wound with crystalline bandages. She rushed to the central console, her fingers flying over the controls. Look at the propagation pattern. It's not random destruction. It's following rules we haven't recognized because we've been thinking about space-time all wrong. Vox's moved closer, its form shifting as it processed the data. These patterns, they resemble biological growth more than physical deterioration. Exactly. Reynolds looked up at the assembled council, her eyes bright with determination. I know how to fix this, but you have to trust me. And more importantly, you have to help me convince Earth's governments to trust each other. Because if we don't stop these unauthorized tests immediately, there won't be a galaxy left to save. The high speaker's resonant voice cut through the chamber. Explain quickly, Dr. Reynolds. The galaxy's patience, and its time, grows short. The test chamber aboard the Council's research vessel hummed with energy as Dr. Amanda Reynolds made her final adjustments. Every species capable of surviving in Earth-normal conditions had sent observers, their environmental suits gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. The rest watched through quantum-linked feeds, their attention focused on what could be humanity's last chance at redemption. The modified drive is ready, Reynolds announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Voxes are the containment fields at full strength. The crystalline physicist's form shimmered with affirmative patterns, multiple redundancies in place, though if your calculations are wrong, they're not. Reynolds allowed herself a small smile. Because we've all been thinking about this backwards. We're not trying to prevent the drive from damaging space-time. We're teaching it to heal what it breaks. She gestured to the quantum matrix at the heart of the drive. Where the original design had been all sharp angles and forced symmetry, this version followed organic curves. Crystalline structures merged with flowing patterns that seemed almost alive. Initiating primary sequence, Reynolds called out. The observers shifted nervously as energy began to build. The high speaker's voice resonated through the chamber. Dr. Reynolds, if this fails, the combined fleets of 17 species stand ready to quarantine Earth. Forever. Reynolds nodded, not taking her eyes off the readings. Then let's make sure it doesn't fail. The drive activated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself twisted. A miniature version of the tears, threatening the galaxy appearing in the test chamber. Several observers moved toward the exits, but Reynolds raised her hand. Watch, she said softly. The tear began to pulse with an inner light. As the assembled species watched in fascination, patterns of energy, not crystalline like standard quantum fields, but flowing like living tissue, began to spread from the drive. They reached the edges of the tear and began to weave reality back together. Impossible, breathed the Meridian representative, its silver fog form swirling in agitation. The quantum energies are healing themselves. Not healing. Vox is corrected, its form bright with excitement. Growing, like biological tissue regenerating after an injury. Dr. Reynolds hasn't just modified the drive. She's transformed it into something entirely new. Reynolds stepped forward, her confidence growing as the readings confirmed her theories. The original tears aren't random destruction. They're more like growing pains, space-time trying to adapt to a new type of quantum manipulation. We didn't need to force it to behave like crystal-based drives. We needed to work with its natural patterns. She brought up a holographic display showing the larger tiers in nearby space. Applied on a larger scale, this same principle should not only stop the tiers from spreading but actually repair them. Space-time wants to heal itself. We just have to provide the right conditions. The Kexarathi ambassador's scales flickered with reluctant admiration. You propose to turn a weapon of mass destruction into a tool of healing. Typical human audacity. Typical human innovation. Vox is countered. They see patterns we miss precisely because they don't share our preconceptions about what's possible. Reynolds initiated the shutdown sequence, her heart soaring as the test chamber's quantum fields returned to normal. No scars, no residual damage, just clean, healthy spacetime. The modified drive is slower than the original design, she admitted, and it requires more energy to operate. But it works with the fabric of reality instead of against it. Each jump leaves spacetime stronger than before, not weaker. The high speaker was silent for a long moment, its energy form pulsing as it considered the implications. Finally, it spoke. You understand what you're proposing. Not just a new form of FTL travel, but a fundamental shift in how we interact with spacetime itself. Reynolds nodded. Humanity knocked on the galaxy's door with a sledgehammer. Now we're learning to pick the lock instead. She smiled. With the Council's permission, I'd like to begin large-scale testing. Those tears in space aren't going to heal themselves. Yet, around the chamber, representatives began signaling agreement. Even the Kexarathi's scales showed patterns of cautious approval. Vox's moved to Reynolds' side, its crystalline form aligned in support. Perhaps, the high speaker mused, humanity's reckless nature has its uses after all. You break barriers we never thought to question, then find ways to repair the damage that teach us all something new. Reynolds began preparing the drive for its next test. That's kind of our thing, she said. We don't just reach for the stars. We find new ways to make them reach back. The emergency alert came during Reynolds' presentation to the Earth's United Science Council. The holographic displays showing her modified drive's success suddenly flickered, replaced by a transmission that made the blood drain from her face. Greetings, Galactic Council. The figure spoke, its form obscured by shifting shadows. We are the Obsidian Concordat, and we have obtained the original specs for humanity's Space Ripper drive. Vox's crystalline form pulsed with alarm patterns. Impossible. Those designs were under maximum security protocols. Nothing is impossible. The shadowy figure continued. When you have allies among those who tire of Council supremacy. Watch. The transmission shifted to show a test chamber similar to Reynolds' original lab. But where her team had proceeded with caution, these beings showed no such restraint. They activated their copied drive at full power. The result was catastrophic. Space itself screamed as a massive tear formed, raw chaos bleeding through the wound in reality. But instead of trying to contain it, the Concordat channeled more power into the drive. By the first light, Voxis whispered, its usual harmonious tones distorted with horror. Reynolds stared at the readings flooding her screens. They've removed all the safety protocols. They're not even trying to control the quantum cascade. The shadowy figure returned. For too long, the Council has maintained order through control of approved technologies. Now we hold the power to tear their precious trade routes apart. Our demands are simple. Full independence for all Concordat worlds, or we shred the quantum slipstream nexus into cosmic confetti. The transmission cut off, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. General Matthews was the first to speak. How many worlds are we talking about? How large is this Concordat? 17 systems, Vox's replied, interfacing with the Council database. Primarily former mining colonies and frontier worlds that have long resented core world dominance, but we never imagined they'd go this far. Reynolds was already running simulations. The tiers they're creating. They're different from the early tests. More unstable. If they try this near the quantum nexus. She looked up, her face pale. They won't just damage it. They'll create a chain reaction that could unravel half the galaxy. The Concordat leadership must know this, Voxis said. They're either desperate or insane. Or both. Reynolds pulled up a map of known Concordat territories. But they've made one critical mistake. They stole the original design, not the modified version. They don't understand what they're really dealing with. The high speaker's voice resonated through a quantum link. Explain, Dr. Reynolds. The organic patterns we discovered. They're not just about healing tears in spacetime. They're signatures. Each drive leaves a distinct quantum wake, like a fingerprint. With the right sensors. She typed rapidly, refining the search parameters. We can track them. Every test they run makes them easier to find. Voxes moved closer, its crystalline fragments aligning in what Reynolds had learned was an expression of intense focus. You propose to hunt them through the quantum distortions they create. Better. Reynolds smiled grimly. I propose to use their own tears against them. Each rupture in space-time is like a beacon to my modified drive. We can follow their trail right to their hidden bases. General Matthews frowned. You're talking about a military operation now, Doctor. This isn't your field. With respect, General, I'm the only one who truly understands how this technology works. Reynolds straightened, her decision made. I need to be on whatever ship goes after them. We'll have one chance to stop them before they reach the Nexus. One chance to prevent galactic collapse. The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. The Council has never authorized a joint military operation with a pre-emergent species. The Council has never faced the destruction of the quantum nexus before. Vox is countered. And Dr. Reynolds is right. We need her expertise. Reynolds looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of Earth and the galaxy. The Concordat thinks they've stolen humanity's most destructive invention. Let's show them they've only gotten half the story. Because while they're trying to tear reality apart, she gestured to her modified drive, its organic patterns pulsing with gentle light. We've learned how to weave it back together. The Council warship Stellar Dawn sliced through space-time like a surgeon's scalpel, its modified quantum drive humming with the organic patterns Dr. Amanda Reynolds had discovered. The bridge crew represented 5 different species, each chosen for their unique abilities. Voxes monitored the quantum fields while Reynolds studied the trail of tears left by the Concordat's stolen drive. Another rupture detected, announced the Meridian Navigator, its silver fog form swirling with concern. They're getting closer to the Nexus. Reynolds nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The tears are becoming more unstable. They don't understand what they're doing to local spacetime. The ship's captain, a synapse cluster entity named First Light in Darkness, pulsed with decision patterns. How close are we to overtaking them? That's the problem, Reynolds said, pulling up a 3-dimensional map of the damaged sectors. They're not traveling in a straight line. Each jump creates a network of tears, like they're trying to. She stopped, her eyes widening. They're not running. They're building something. Voxis shifted closer, its crystalline form refracting the bridge's emergency lights. Explain. Reynolds manipulated the display, highlighting the pattern of quantum tears. Look at the arrangement. These aren't random jumps. They're creating a web of instabilities around the nexus. If they detonate their drive at the center point, the cascade would be unstoppable. Vox is finished, its harmonics dropping to frequencies that made the hull vibrate. The entire network would collapse. A new alarm pierced the bridge. The tactical officer, a Kexarathi whose scales flickered with battle patterns, reported, multiple ships detected ahead. Concordat signatures. They're waiting for us, Reynolds realized. This was a trap. The main viewer showed 5 Concordat vessels arranged in a pentagonal formation. As the stellar dawn approached, reality itself began to warp around them. They're all activating their drives simultaneously. Vox is warned. The combined tears could tear this entire sector apart. Reynolds finished. She turned to the captain. I need direct control of our drive. Now. First Light in Darkness pulsed with hesitation. The energy requirements would drain our combat systems. We won't need combat systems if space-time collapses, Reynolds countered. Her fingers were already flying across the controls. Voxis, remember how we discovered the organic patterns? How space-time tries to heal itself. The crystalline physicist's form brightened with understanding. You want to create a resonance pattern. Exactly. Their tears are destructive, but they follow mathematical laws. If we can match those patterns, but in reverse. The captain's neural network processed the implications, like fighting fire with fire. Reynolds nodded grimly. More like fighting cancer with targeted therapy. We'll use their own tears to deliver our healing pattern straight to the source. The Concordat ships began their attack, reality screaming as multiple tears formed around the stellar dawn. The ship shuddered as space-time buckled. Now, Reynolds commanded, activating her modified drive at full power. Energy surged through the ship as organic patterns of quantum force met the Concordat's destructive tears. Where the patterns intersected, space-time itself seemed to pause, caught between destruction and healing. "It's working," HFYSci-Fi reported, its form blazing with excitement. "The tears are beginning to resonate with our healing pattern." Reynolds watched the quantum readings carefully. The Concordat ships, their drives are starting to synchronize with ours. They can't help it. It's like an immune response in space-time itself. On the main viewer, the enemy vessels struggled as their stolen technology began working against them. Their destructive tears transformed into healing patterns, spreading through space like antibodies attacking an infection. "They're trying to shut down their drives," the tactical officer reported, scales flickering with triumph. "Too late," Reynolds said quietly. "Once the healing pattern takes hold, it's self-sustaining, like healthy tissue replacing a wound." The Concordat ships hung powerless in space as their weapons against reality became tools of restoration. Around them, the web of tears they had created began to seal itself, space-time returning to its natural state. First light in darkness pulsed with what Reynolds had learned to recognize as admiration. You turned their own strategy against them, used their destruction to power our healing. Reynolds smiled, watching the quantum fields return to normal. That's the thing about humanity's dangerous innovations. Sometimes the most destructive forces can teach us the most about healing. 3 months after the Concordat crisis, Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood in the newly constructed Quantum Innovation Center on Mars, watching Earth rise over the rusty horizon. The facility represented something unprecedented. A joint Human Council research institution dedicated to studying and safely developing revolutionary technologies. "The last of the space-time tears has healed," HFYSci-Fi reported, its crystalline form catching the morning sunlight. "The quantum nexus is stable. More stable than before, actually. Your healing patterns seem to have strengthened the underlying fabric of reality." Reynolds smiled, remembering how their first meeting had been filled with fear and warnings of cosmic doom. Now they worked side by side, exploring the boundaries of what was possible. "The council session is about to begin," HFYSci-Fi reminded her. "Are you ready to present the Phoenix Protocol?" Reynolds nodded, checking her notes one last time. The name had been humanity's idea, a recognition that their most dangerous creation had died and been reborn as something greater. The council chamber materialized around them as the quantum link activated. Representatives from every spacefaring species attended, their environmental bubbles creating a rainbow of atmospheres and conditions. Dr. Reynolds, the high speaker's resonant voice filled the chamber. "The Council recognizes Earth's contribution to galactic security during the Concordat crisis. But this new proposal of yours, the Phoenix Protocol, is more than just a set of safety guidelines," Reynolds began. "It's a new way of thinking about innovation itself." She activated a holographic display showing the modified drive's organic patterns. "What we learned from the Space Ripper drive applies to all potentially dangerous technologies. Instead of just trying to contain them, we need to understand their true nature." The Kexarathi ambassador's scales flickered with interest. "You propose to extend this methodology beyond quantum drives." "Exactly." Reynolds expanded the display to show other technologies under development. "Every breakthrough has patterns we can work with instead of against. The protocol establishes frameworks for identifying these patterns and developing innovations that strengthen reality rather than damage it." HFYSci-Fi moved forward, its form arranged in the crystalline equivalent of a proud stance. "Already, we've applied these principles to 3 other technologies that were previously considered too dangerous to develop. The results have been extraordinary." The Meridian representative's silver fog swirled with excitement. "The healing patterns you discovered, They have applications beyond space-time manipulation. They're everywhere once you know how to look, Reynolds confirmed. It's not just about fixing damage. It's about understanding how systems naturally want to behave and working with those tendencies instead of forcing our will upon them. The High Speaker's energy form pulsed thoughtfully, and you believe humanity should help guide this process. The same species that nearly unraveled space-time mere months ago. Reynolds stood straighter. Who better? We've learned from our mistakes. We understand both the temptation to push too hard and the importance of finding better ways forward. That's why we're proposing the creation of the Cosmic Conservation Court. She brought up the plans for the new organization, a joint force of scientists, engineers, and theorists from all species, dedicated to turning dangerous innovations into tools for progress. We've already seen interest from some of the former Concordat worlds, their scientists eager to work toward healing rather than destruction. The chamber filled with overlapping transmissions as representatives debated the implications. Finally, the High Speaker raised its energy form for attention. The Council has watched humanity's journey with great interest, it announced. From the terror of your first breakthrough, through the wisdom gained in modifying it, to your crucial role in saving the quantum nexus. Perhaps its tone carried what might have been amusement. Perhaps the galaxy needs your particular brand of reckless innovation, tempered by the lessons you've learned. Reynolds felt Vox's supportive presence beside her as the Council voted. One by one, the representatives signaled their approval. The Phoenix Protocol would be implemented across Council space, with humanity helping to lead the way. A year ago, we feared you would destroy reality itself, the High Speaker concluded. Now you help us see new ways to strengthen it. Your species continues to surprise us, Dr. Reynolds. Reynolds looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and smiled. That's kind of our thing, she said. Breaking barriers just shows us which ones need to be rebuilt better. And now, together, we can make sure the next breakthrough doesn't break reality. It makes reality stronger. Outside the Council chamber, Earth's sun rose over the Martian horizon, its light catching the quantum fields that now visibly strengthen the fabric of space itself, a testament to humanity's greatest innovation, learning to heal what they had unknowingly wounded.